Hello everyone, welcome to online design talks organized by AKDO. Today we will host architect Zuhal Kol and Carlos Zarco Sanz from Openact Architecture Studio from Spain with their speeches title of Infrastructural Urbanism in Waterscapes. Please keep your cameras and microphones off during the session. If you have any questions, you can write down to the chat box on the right-hand side on the screen. Your questions will be asked towards the end of the session. Now I leave the floor for Erdoğan Akbulut for his introduction speech. Then event will be started. Have a nice session. Buyurun Erdoğan Bey.
Are we going to continue in English or Turkish?
English.
English, okay.
Yeah.
However you prefer.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to meet all of you, to welcome all of you again. I think this is the 33rd webinar of Silkar-AKDO. And it is also a pleasure to meet Zuhal and her husband today again. They have been again our guests in one of our Instagram webinars. So I was talking to Zuhal yesterday, and I have to confess that I was very much impressed at this age, at this young age, about her accomplishments. And living in abroad at this age, we are really proud of that kind of people who are able to present and to stay alive on their feet in different countries. I really appreciate that. And I'm eager to listen what they are going to talk about, especially about water spaces, although it is not very much related to stone, but at the end of the day, are all natural issues, natural events. So I hope you enjoy their presentation, and I'll leave the word to them. Thank you, all of you, for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erdoğan.
Thank you very
Nice
much,
to meet you
Erdoğan. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Hello. Hopefully you're able to hear us and see us. We would like to thank one more time to Erdoğan Akbulut and to his team in Silkar-AKDO for welcoming us here, for inviting us, and for giving us this opportunity to share our projects and our ideas with you. So as they have actually kind of introduced us, I am Zuhal Kol, I'm a Turkish architect, and my partner...
My name is Carlos Zarco, I'm a Spanish architect in this case.
And I guess someone is writing, annotating right now on the screen. Okay, maybe we can just clear that. Okay, thank you very much for joining us today in here. And today we will be talking about some of our works that are around some waterscapes. And we're going to be talking about infrastructural urbanism in waterscapes. Of course, we're going to be kind of talking about our works. We're going to be talking about Openact, our firm. And we're going to be talking about the issues of water today, which is the source of life that brought us all onto this world. Maybe we can very briefly introduce ourselves. Well, we met in Germany.
Yes.
And we have Openact. He's from Spain, I'm from Turkey. I graduated from Istanbul Technical University in 2011. Later, I had my master's degree in 2013 from Cornell University, where I was also working as a teaching assistant. Since then, we started with Carlos, the foundations of Openact. And I guess we can say that since 2016, since 2017, we formed Openact right now as our this is our only job right now. This is what we do right now, day to day in our lives. And since then, it's formally continuing with offices in Istanbul and also in Madrid.
we have been working all these years in European countries and in Turkey too, also heavily. So we are proud we found this pattern that we're going to present you today somehow. That at the end we found ourselves working always constantly revolving around water. I don't know why, but it happened to be like that. So somehow it is kind of a good retrospective to have a look at these works that we have done and put them in a context together. Thanks to Silkar for the invitation. We are glad and happy to be here and be part of this. So I'm a Spanish architect, as Zuhal explained. I studied in Madrid. I'm from Madrid, and since then we have been nomad architects somehow, moving around in between Madrid and Istanbul. So
mainly around Europe, mainly around this part of the world. So let's begin to our presentation. Hopefully you're able to see the screen. Please, if there's any problem, let us know. Of course, we're going to be talking about our works today, and we're kind of going to explain our ideas about the Waterscapes, but none of the works that we are going to be showing today are solely our works. Architecture is really impossible if you're working individually. You always need a team, and these are all collective works of these faces that you're seeing here on the screen, these brilliant minds, these beautiful faces. They have been part of Openact. We have been working with them for several years now, and their works and their amazing ideas, their brilliant ideas actually gave rise to these projects that we're going to be showing today. So we are, as we said before, we are a Madrid and Istanbul-based office, and we're working mainly on public space and public infrastructure projects. So the scales that we're working on are ranging between urban and architectural because of the public nature of the works, and also again because of this public nature of the works and of these projects, we are involved generally in projects that are supported and provided by government authorities in different countries. Therefore, we are attending to many national and international competitions. So we have numerous awards in these competitions, but our productions are not only limited to architecture and urbanism projects. Due to our research, we are also a studio that is constantly producing research work through different mediums, such as exhibitions, biennales, conferences, and seminars, just like this one. And we're continuously publishing our works via online and printed publications. Today we're going to be talking about Waterscapes and our projects on Waterscapes, but it would be just not really fair to directly jump into that without explaining what is the main focus, what is the main research concern of our studio. So we are gonna kind of talk about this concept of the open project and the concept of the open systems, because it's also so much related with water and waterscapes and water in the city. Because the open project constitutes the very foundations of our research, and it's also our understanding of urban and architectural realms they're inseparable from the open projects or the open systems, as we call them, because we constantly question our role as spatial designers within the projects that we are producing. And on the screen you are seeing this terminology. There are some keywords that each and every day we are seeing more and more, like adaptability, contingency, responsiveness, multiscalarness, reactiveness, indeterminacy, right? So we're coming across these words every day more and more, and not only within our profession, as I said, this is actually like each day in the news, you will be coming across with these kind of terminology. It's because the dynamic complexity of our environment is inviting architects, designers, or whoever that is dealing with the world, with earth, air, and water, to a transformed discipline where we cannot, where we have to now make new characterizations through contingency or immateriality or with the blurry lines of changing constants. So our traditional role as architects was drawing the lines that ordered the world. But this is no longer valid because, you know, the change is so rapid and it's so continuous that, you know, drawing those lines are getting harder and harder each and every single day. So we really need to question our role right now and how actually we can challenge our traditional role as we are drawing and determining these lines, or can we even determine them? We are asking these questions every single day. And within that regard, like, you know, it's really important to actually, this is one of our favorite slides, I think, like that we show in all of our lectures, like it's a must-have. So this image that you're seeing here was taken by the Apollo 8 astronauts in 24th of December in 1968. It's a photo that's called Earthrise. It's the first photo of Earth that you know, people saw for the very first time from outside of the Earth. And of course, it's created a huge impact in terms of the understanding of the planet that we are living in, because, you know, what they had in mind before seeing this photo was just the world maps that were drawn by people, and those world maps were politically very much manipulated. You know, they had these boundaries of countries, they had the lines, you know, there were divisions in between. So, you know, when they saw this photo of Earth, what they saw was, like, there were not really those divisions and those very strict lines that were ordering the world. Instead, what they have seen was this intertwined systems that are all networked and that are all connected and that have all these like blurry lines, because the world is in this constant transformation. So this generated a huge impact, and of course it also impacted the understanding of architecture too. And in here, as you can see, one of the most, I mean, what makes our planet this blue marble is water. And that's also, like, you know, one of the biggest fluid systems of Earth that is constantly changing, revolving. And that's what brought life. That's what, as we know, gave birth to life, gave birth to civilizations, and gave birth to cities that we are living in. So this is no surprise that, you know, wherever you go in the world, you're probably seeing that the cities are either located next to a sea or they are located next to a river. You know, what gave birth to them is always a source of water. And Vitruvius, in his famous De Architectura, or as we know it today, the 10 books on architecture, he refers to water in the 8th chapter of the book. And he starts by saying that Thales of Miletus, you know, it's in Turkey today. He was one of the 7 sages. He declared that water was the first principle of all things. And then Vitruvius continues saying in the book, we observe indeed not only that all creatures have been begotten of these elements, but also that none can be nourished without them, nor grow, nor sustain themselves. And then he's adding, saying that, therefore, the divine intelligence, you know, decided that those things which were truly necessary to the nations would be neither difficult nor expensive to obtain. Not like pearls, gold, silver, and the other things that neither the body nor the nature requires. So, of course, this sentence right now, you know, is very different than how we are observing water today, right? His observations that you know, he did in the 1st century before Christ about water being neither difficult nor expensive to obtain are, of course, not really valid for us today. Today, we're talking about immense problems about accessibility to water, to clean water. and if it's whether expensive or not, or can we reach it or not, if the divine intelligence is really providing it so easily for us. So we're facing increasing challenges in our accessibility to water resources, which of course Vitruvius's book is claiming as the first principle of all things. It's true, it's still needed, but it's so problematic to obtain it and to access it. And within our cities, I mean, just like our cities appearing around the water, we still gather around the water. It's our main common source of existence and our main concern today within the 21st century, right? Like with all the climate crisis and everything. And the role of public space in relation to water or water infrastructures within our cities have, again, very huge responsibilities to incite the cities, to incite the public to come together in action and in speech, and to care for these unique source of life so that it can endure from one generation to the other. It can transcend our brief lifespan on Earth. After all, I mean, when we think about water, it was here before us, and it's supposed to be here after us. So within these understandings, we approach to our water infrastructure projects or to our waterscape projects that are themselves generating a new landscape, becoming the central element for a new social ecology within our 21st century atmospheres. And today we are going to show you 3 of our projects that are our very recent projects, where water suggested new understanding of publicness. So now I'm going to give...
Yes, thank you very much, Zuhal, for the beautiful presentation. I didn't see it before, and it's really nice. But in parallel to this presentation of water and how important is water for all of us in our lives, we are going to present you 3 projects. 3 projects there, each one of them in a different country. And the first project we would like to share with you is the result of an international competition that we won in Zagreb. Zagreb is the capital of Croatia in Europe. We won the first award of Europan 13. If some of you don't know what Europan or what it means or what kind of competition is, please, if there are young architects in the audience, I'm pretty sure there are. So please have a look and check. There is a international competition for young architects in Europe, and they're really nice and forward-coming jobs and works in the platform. So in this context, it never hurts to say this about Europan, but in this context, the competition actually asked, we are in the city of Zagreb in Croatia, and it was focusing on the forgotten spaces, public spaces around the river banks of the river Sava. The Sava River is the wildest and strongest branch of the river Danube, and it passes through 5 different countries, if I'm not wrong. And it's so wild, actually, that the city of Zagreb has a really particular relationship with its river, unlike, for example, some other European capitals that are established, not also established, but they are also reasoned around the river. Zagreb's urban growth, as you can see in the diagram below, had been formed somehow with a tendency of move away from the river, trying to avoid these constant changes in trajectory due to the floods that actually the river was creating. And as the wildest actual branch of river Danube, Sava historically had harmed and distracted Zagreb through its floods and through its constant trajectory changes, like you can see. And it's not until the 70s that actually the city managed somehow, with the technology of the embankment and the construction of the dikes around the river, that was able to control somehow and channel the waters. And since then, Zagreb has expanded towards south, leaving the river channel in the middle of the urban scape. So aiming to test the potential of these riverbanks as vital spaces for the city of Zagreb under the topic of the competition and the main theme of adaptable city, the brief asked for proposals that actually can shift the perception somehow of that area after all these memories of the floods of the past. As you can see, if you know Zagreb, you probably know, if you have visited the city, is this vast area of 7 kilometers that is cutting in half the city center of Zagreb, leaving a huge void in the middle of the city. The dark area around it is the river. There is around 100 meters in width, and then we have the 2 embankments that are the flood zones. So it's roughly 300 meters in total and 7 kilometers long. So as you can guess, is quite huge. So the main question for us at that point was how to transform this vast 7 kilometer long floodplain into an enduring public space, but of course with temporary programming due to the flood risk. Later, as we were commissioned with the project in 2017, and we started working with the city of Zagreb, actually the project site kind of shifted in between the 3 bridges, the 3 main bridges of Zagreb. Zagreb has this very symmetrical planning coming from its Austrian past. And the idea was that this would be a riverbank park somehow, but temporary, and also shifting and evolving with the citizens over the course of the years. Due to the increase of the water levels in the site, which occur like several times a year, no permanent structure, as I mentioned before, was not allowed to be placed on the site. So to be able to cope with the natural flows and the programmatic changes that required by the citizens, but also required by the natural resources and the phased implementations of the city of Zagreb, the project defined a set of strategies. That is something that you are going to see that we kind of do in all our projects, but at different scales that will somehow tackle the unknownness of the project. So the basic modules that we proposed in the smaller scale, we call them activators. There are 9 pavilions designed by basic scaffolding structure. The scaffolding that you can find in the construction sites normally. As you can imagine, we have to meet with the emergency flood protocols of Croatian waters in that case. So they actually were able to predict the flood from coming 4 to 5 days before it was happening. So we had a really short time span to dismantle all these structures and remove them from the area at that point. So these different pavilions are able to host programs and activities within themselves, but also when clustering in an M scale that we called it, and we grouped these activators in different combinations, we can create bigger scale programs such as a floating concert, temporary museum, or a big sports event that can happen in the area. Then later on the larger scale, the project proposed really subtle interventions such as biking paths and walking paths to connect these cluster areas that were formed around the river. And the project also envisioned different sports activities, beach football, beach volleyball, horse riding, paragliding, and some restorative plantation to filtrate the waters of Sava. And finally, within the large, huge city scale that I showed you before, we introduced this idea that the pavilion clusters actually will be moved from one site to another in different implementation seasons to help start this urban conversation between the different neighborhoods of Zagreb, and also to enhance this infrastructural connection in between the east and west of the city. So as the pavilions are being moved from one side to another, the different neighborhoods actually will start a conversation with each other. They will discuss which type of programs they want to bring to the site, in which type of programs they don't want to bring, or where the potential locations of the pavilions in the future will be. And that engagement and feedback mechanism will feed the project with all these local ideas and improvements actually that will be introduced in the future versions of the project. Like that, the project will turn into an open-ended, adaptable process somehow that not only adapts to the natural changes of the site, such as the the increase in the water level, but also to the present and future of society's needs. So in 2019, before COVID, early summer, the first phase of the project was actually implemented and completed on 3 of sites in the embankments of Sava River. 9 of the pavilions were mounted in 3 different sites next to the Hendrix Bridge and basically the most used bridge of the city of Zagreb. The constructed pavilions were activated with various cultural and sports programs between the months of June and September. And actually, we didn't encounter any flood that summer, which was good news. Sometimes we were quite scared that the flood was going to come and take these pavilions all during the night. But also in this first phase, we were able to test the speed of the construction and how fast actually with a team of 20 people, they were able to mount one basic structure in one afternoon. So it was quite faster than we were expecting. So that kind of relaxed us a little bit and we were able to sleep a bit afterwards. So we were able to test also the adaptability and the resilience of these activators, as we call them, according to the necessities of each user. So there is a base that we provided. There is a basic structure with the scaffolding structure pavilion. We provided to each tenant and we kept the holistic approach of the project like that. But later each user had the freedom somehow to decorate or to program the spaces in their own terms. So keeping the openness of the project from different scales. And the programs and activities of the first phase were ranging from open air cinema, stage, beach bar, cafes, beach bar, cafes, sports fields, also playgrounds, kayaking. It showed an alternative of use for these riverbanks of Sava during that summer. And also there were, as I was mentioning, kayaking on the site. So as part of this continuous participatory process of the project, the Sava Talks actually is a roundtable and an exhibition that is planned to, it was planned to take place in 2020, but due to COVID, of course, this got postponed. But this interactive exhibition is designed so the citizens are able to come and provide their feedback and give comments and discuss potential locations of future versions of the project. And they can even create their own clusters with some small models that we had on the exhibition. And they will create demand for potential locations of these programs. As I mentioned, the project was planned to be implemented in 2020, again, as a second phase. However, due to the, as you all know, we are meeting in an online forum right now. So due to this health crisis that we are living in, the process was postponed. Hopefully, if everything goes as planned, the second phase of the project will be implemented on the site. And it will be really exciting for us to see what more possibilities and options and different scenarios will take shape of the project. These are some of the plans that we had for the upcoming events. And here, really briefly, this is a video we prepared after the competition for the exhibition. You can see the adaptability of the project for different program scenarios, but also how the project is resilient somehow to the flood conditions of the site. And each pavilion has a different program within themselves, but then when they create a much bigger program when they are clustered within each other. In the end, the project and also ourselves as the architectural team, we're trying to cope with this large amount of unknownness of the project and unpredictability of this project. There was surrounding the project at all times, and within this programmatic and ecologic indeterminacy, the project aimed to transform this area into a vibrant space for the city. So at least those months. So yes.
At least those months we
experienced.
Yeah. Let's see how it will continue. Well, the second project that we're going to be showing today is actually from Istanbul. It's another competition project that we did last year, but this time this project is not the first prize winner of the competition. Unfortunately, we got the second award with our proposal. So now we're going to be looking at the famous Golden Horn, or Haliç as we know it in Turkey. And our project proposal, that was Live with Water. It was actually claiming that there was this disconnection with the water in regards to how the city historically was establishing a relationship between land and water, that now it was forgotten, now it was actually broken, and the project aimed to kind of like mend it. So if I'm pretty sure like many of you right now already know where Istanbul is, what Golden Horn is, where it is, and what's the meaning of Golden Horn for the entire Istanbul. I mean, but just in case there's someone maybe in here who doesn't know where Istanbul is and what Golden Horn means for Istanbul. So Golden Horn, as we can see here in this historic map, is a small branch that is a unique estuary that's bringing the waters of the northern part of Istanbul, and then it's opening up towards Bosphorus. But before it opens up, it's generating this unique topography, this unique geography that was formed with the with thousands and thousands of years of natural processes, and it's kind of, in that sense, it generated like a natural port, which gave rise to Istanbul as a city to be established in here. And this because it was an area that was protected from the wind, it was an area that was also easy to protect and defend against the enemy, right? All of a sudden we start seeing a city appearing around it. So Haliç, or Golden Horn, as a port city, established a gravitational point for centuries and centuries, where historical, archaeological, ecological, industrial, cultural, and architectural layers were intertwined by creating a microcosm that reconciled people, reconciled water, nature, goods, and stories in a multitude of scales ranging from local to global, because water is at the same time is that point where, you know, the scales are merging to each other. The nations are merging and connecting to each other. So Haliç, actually, Golden Horn actually was that point where the local met the global for centuries and centuries. And it was that place where were hosted 3 empires also. So, but then when we come to 20th century, I mean, of course, we can speak so much about the history of Haliç and Golden Horn, but, you know, we have limited time, so we're directly going to jump into our project proposal. So when we look at the 20th century urban zoning decisions around Haliç, I'm always going to be referring Haliç, not Golden Horn, sorry about that. So when we look at the 20th century urban decisions around Haliç, what we are seeing that this traditional port city, which was like based on trading, you know, it was like a trade port and a traditional one, but then it's turning into an industrial port in the 20th century. So the zoning decisions and industrialization of this ancient port did not only cause water contamination that we are still very seriously dealing today, but also it deteriorated its environmental landscape and its natural habitat. And it created this coastal urban fabric that is disconnected from its fundamental originator, which is the water. So to really understand the area before we started working on it, even though most of us who were working on this project were from Istanbul, we really actually wanted to understand and we wanted to listen to the site. So therefore, we conducted a huge research study and we have been looking at the historic maps, you know, old cartographic studies. We were looking at some sketches, some traveling notes, old photos, old postcards, miniatures, some newspaper articles, theater plays. I mean, you know, we looked at, we tried to look at so many different literature also, and theses that were written about the area, or some books, because the area is so rich and so multi-layered. So this urban and regional approaches and analysis were, I mean, we researched all of them, but all of this information, then we wanted to transfer them into the cartographic space. So then we took all this information and started a mapping process to kind of understand the space within the city and how actually land was connected with the water. And maybe can we learn something from the past of it to actually, you know, to find out some strengths, some opportunities that are hidden in there within the bones of the city, to actually recover and restore its relationship with water once again. So as we started mapping, as we started bringing all this information of the research onto these diagrammatic maps, like this map was the one where we have found out this urban morphology became so apparent to us, that actually the entire port city, since the Byzantine times and later with the Ottoman period, it was based on this morphology of this traditional spatial organization of a port economy, which was so much guided by the port, the pier, the gate, and the street. And what we were seeing today, for example, think of Uzun Çarşı. Uzun Çarşı Street is leading up to Grand Bazaar, Kapalı Çarşı, which was, you know, leading towards a gate on the city walls. And that gate was leading towards a pier. And that pier was actually part of the entire port, right? So this pier, gate, port, you know, actually those words are also so similar to each other. If you think of the Latin origins of the word, gate even is porta, right? Or the pier again, porta, like, you know, so all of them are, they all meant the same thing. That was that place. And that was, this was actually the framework that was tying the land with the water. And there was this constant relationship day by day in between the inner parts of the city and between the waterfront of the city. And that today, when we were looking, we were trying to kind of understand how the city transformed from that past to right now, and what actually we can learn from the past, and maybe if we can implement something by learning something from the past of it. So when we were looking, actually the old city walls right now, again, there was some sort of like an infrastructural barrier, again, laying horizontal to the waterfront. You know, in the old times, that was the city wall. And right now we have the vehicle road, and we have the tram railroad, right? And then the gates are still somehow there. You can kind of like see the drawing on the right. You know, some of the gates are still there somehow. The streets, the main streets that are leading from the inner parts of the city towards the water are still acting as those like main streets to come down. The areas where there are gates are still acting as, you know, are still where today we have the pedestrian crosses to cross actually to the waterfront. However, as we cross to the waterfront, none of the activity that used to be there is there anymore. Those areas are undefined, and they're like these huge brownfield areas that's actually hard to approach, really hard to be there, really hard to stay put and spend time. So that was the question. The question actually, like the project then started, then tried to understand this and actually mend that front part of the urban framework, which was lost and forgotten. And we said that maybe we could actually tie this broken relationship between the land and the water by actually listening to the city and actually understanding its original urban morphology, and again tie it with this creator, which is water. And then what we did was kind of like to revive this entire urban framework. We generated these programs where the cities again led to piers, but this time the piers were actually recreational piers, and this time the ports were not trade ports nor industrial ports, but actually they were recreational ports. And so we started like transforming all these spaces. As you can see, this is a pier, but this time this pier is not used neither for industry nor for trade, but this time it's used for water sports. And as you can see, there are these floating platforms. This time they are not the boats that are carrying the goods nor the products of the industry, but this time what those floating elements are carrying is the activities of recreation. And what they're carrying is this new publicness as we are defining it. But of course, looking at, you know, when we are talking about Haliç and tying its relationships, it's not only, you know, with how humans are interacting with it daily through recreational activities, but also we need to restore and recuperate the water ecologies and the green ecologies of Haliç. And for that, we started looking not only our projects site specifically, but we were looking at the overall territory of this estuary coming from the northern part and how it is then being discharged to Bosphorus. So we looked at the entire green infrastructure, and again, what we have found that, you know, the city actually was again built on top of these street, gate, pier, port network, and again, those streets were leading down that are leading down towards the water were actually designed according to the prevailing wind directions of the city, which were making the city, which were making the ventilation through the city much easier, and also the pollination through the city much easier. So we tried to find the patches that were missing. We tried to find those areas that actually can, you know, create this green system like a much more robust system as it was before. And we tried to restore and recuperate that as well. And then we looked at the water infrastructure of the city, and we found out that again, those streets were the areas topographically where water was being carried down towards Haliç. And right on those streets that were carrying the water, actually they had the aqueducts, they had the cisterns, they had the hammam. So actually they were using rainwater even back then, you know, and they really understood and appreciated the importance of these natural sources within our lives. And again, what we wanted to do, we wanted to carry the water and feed the waters of Haliç with clean rainwater. But as you know, we were taking them down, we were actually cleaning them. We proposed to clean them through bioswales, through rain gardens. So when the rainwater was reaching the waters of Haliç, it was actually clean. And through this whole thing, we generated a holistic framework that, you know, where the green and water infrastructure was fully functioning through this ancient urban framework. And here you can see a really diagrammatic section of it, how the water is flowing down towards the water of Haliç, and how with this movement of water, also recreational life is occurring on top of it. And also, of course, the area is historically layered and layered and layered, and also transportationally is so much layered too. It's the area where you can find the sea transportation, the vehicle transportation, you can find the railway transportation, and all are so much, you know, superimposed on top of each other with so many intersections. And it's also a really chaotic area in that sense. But, you know, what we found out actually with the transportation, we tried to create a pedestrian-friendly area with the use of public transportation, but also we really try to get rid of this this huge invasion of sea vehicles and also motorized vehicles from the area as much as possible, to generate this air and to recreate this area that was actually for overall, it was originally also designed for pedestrian circulation all over. And all the stories, you know, all the fires, all the news that made it to the newspapers, all the you know, the past with the war and the past with the celebrations and everything. We also tried to map them, and we tried to put them geographically to their locations. That also played a huge important role as we were trying to decide the programs all over. And as we said again, you know, the waterfront is such a narrow area in Haliç today, especially in where we were working between Eminönü and Fener. So there's literally no space for you to place a sports field, you know, for the neighborhood or for the people, you know, who are visiting this area. Therefore, this time we took this idea of the port, and instead of the boats that were floating, we generated these platforms that are floating with public amenities on top of them. So, you know, and like that, we were able to put, instead of 5 different basketball courts in 5 different neighborhoods, we were able to actually place one big floating basketball field, which would be visiting those 5 different neighborhoods, and that would start a conversation in between them. And of course, also these floating fields, they were coupled with aquatic vegetations beneath them, all that were also cleansing the water to restore its aquatic habitat. And all this movement of recreation were also supported by a digital app, as we wanted to give the opportunity to people for them to monitor, but also become part of this entire talk, and, like, you know, also become the decision makers in terms of how this public space would be functioning day to day. And overall, I mean, the project aimed to foster this connection of the land and the water, and hence the conversation between natural and human spheres. And it tried to attempt to recover and recuperate its water ecologies and probe the impact of climate change, as well as the water level change at the intersection of socio-ecological, socio-political, and also socio-spatial encounters of 21st century. But yeah, as I said, this was a second prize winner, so we're not going to be able to see this being built, unfortunately.
It will be good. But so for the third project, that actually is another river that we're going to present you. I'm going to present you really quickly. I think we are getting too long speaking.
But this is also another competition project, and this is a winner this time, yeah.
This is the last project that we have done in the office, and we won, as Zuhal just said. This is in Podgorica, that is the capital of Montenegro, and amongst many other European capitals, there are situated around the river, like I was explaining in Zagreb. Podgorica's conversation with its river, with Morača, that is the river that passes through Podgorica, remains distinct it has some peculiarities too, and offers an exceptional opportunities to explore new models of co-creation and cohabitation with nature, in this case for the 21st century. So in almost all European capitals, there are regions around the river, and we are finding this pattern again, that rivers have been profoundly manipulated. Somehow they have been tamed, they have been constructed, they have been urbanized throughout history around them. But it's not the case. This is not the particular case in Podgorica. Due to its unique morphology, as we found out during the research of the project, this forming of a sharp canyon with almost 25 meters difference in height in between the riverbed level and the terrain level or the upper level, kind of created this layer of protection around the river that kept it untouched somehow in the middle of the urban scape. And also due to the recent history and the past history of urban planning approaches that and strategies that actually were applied in the city of Podgorica, somehow they omitted the river and avoided any sort of reciprocal relationship in between the city and its river. Somehow the planning decisions jumped from east to west of the city, just jump into it, just leaving it there untouched. And Moracha, actually, the river Moracha persisted somehow to stay almost unperished, untouched, and untamed wilderness, we were calling it, right in the middle of a really urbanized area as is the capital of Montenegro. So this a wilderness that actually nurtures and is nurturing an entire ecosystem within its waterscape and water territory that is expanding from the mountains around the city to Lake Sadar in the south. And Moracha is a vital originator for Montenegro's Adriatic basin, actually. And it manifests these different ecologies infiltrating into Podgorica, right into the middle of the city center. And Moracha River also holds the highest, if I don't remember wrong, is the highest floristic and faunal biodiversity values for the entire Europe. So it's placing the city of Podgorica and Montenegro actually amongst the top of the Mediterranean and European countries in terms of these biodiversity levels. And the river embodies and exhibits this huge territorial biodiversity and unique natural resources of the country right through the capital, as I was mentioning, pushing us to rethink. And in this project, it really pushed us to rethink what is the relationship of Moracha River with the rest of the city, and also what is the relationship of the rest of the city with these natural landscapes and natural environments that we found in the middle of Moracha. So in this case, instead of proposing an urbanized river bank park, somehow the project concentrates on discovering a non-invasive socio-ecological encounters. Meanwhile, intervening in this extremely valuable natural environment, the project aims to develop this sociocultural density without being necessarily urban, and ambitions to provide a harmonized common habitat, balancing the human and the ecological processes and natural preservation of the site. So the project actually came up with and envisioned a river Moracha that is somehow an oasis in the heart of Podgorica, and is offering an easy escape from the hectic pace and constructed environment of a capital, of the everyday urban life of citizens of Podgorica, and turning into an ecological destination. Somehow this strategy focused on minimizing the impact to this natural environment, but also reframing this relationship between the urbanity and nature by introducing a framework of gradients, of systematically defined methods of coexistence on every level in between these natural systems and the human systems, from program to circulation and also ecological restoration of the area. So this proposed framework included a series of toolboxes that are based on aquatic and terrestrial ecological functional zones of the river. And it was consisting on a circulation toolbox, proposing new methods of transportation and new mobility decisions around and revolving around the river, such as bike paths, adventure paths, and also included a new bridge for a forgotten connection. Also, this set of strategies included an ecological toolbox that helped protecting, restoring, but also enhancing the natural existing ecosystem and existing habitats that we found in the river area. And as third toolbox, we had the programmatic toolbox that its aim was to maximize somehow the relationship, this forgotten relationship of the city with its river, and create and maximize this relationship in between the citizens of Podgorica and its river. We implemented new cultural, recreational activities, and also adventure programs such as hiking. There was a zip line to cross from one side of the river to the other side, and also fishing activities, swimming activities, to try to enhance and empower this potential that this great area of the city has with the river. So the project actually reframes this relationship that I have been talking about, but also proposes a responsive and communicative virtual ecosystem. As Zuhal was explaining, something that we are doing. We try to empower people, giving them the chance of taking participation into their own decisions of the project, into their own environments. And that will enhance, again, the interaction and the data interaction in between the physical constructed spaces in the city center and its citizens. So like this, the project consolidates a more empirically based human/nature, somehow centered design. In this case, aiming to achieve this participatory, transparent, and dynamic future for the city of Moracha. Here you can see how the programs activate both riverbanks of Sava, and you can actually see in this section the difficult topography that the river has in its core, but at the same time preserving all these natural characteristics of the area that was surrounding the river. Also in this project, we had to cope and respond somehow to the natural flows of the river and the increasing water levels. We offer also a temporary adjustable programming that it will be placed according to in the lower levels of the river. It will be placed according to seasons, and in the dry area, let's say in the upper levels, it will be more constant programming. So that dual relationship of a fixed program and a temporary program in the lower level will keep the project alive and moving forward with the city of Podgorica. So these strategic layers actually synthesize the priorities of Moracha and illustrate this vision that will enable ecological and spatial conditions, but also new socio-ecological interactions that will activate this public space, promoting systems of reconciliation while creating this eco-political project that will evolve again with the city and with the citizens' decision. And it becomes not a project but it's not a project of passive preservation and renaturalization of the riverbanks, but it's a project of this symbiotic activation in between the river and actually its citizens. So with that, I'm leaving. I think we spoke too much, so I'm leaving the word to Zuhal. I don't know if she wants to say something else.
I think we can close by saying that research on water will be.
Bir saniye, sesinizi tekrar açalım.
No?
Now is it fine? Okay.
It was turning off by itself.
So I guess it's fair to say that, you know, our research with water will be continuing. It's also fair to say that, you know, we are also very, I guess this is an arena that we never thought that we are so much focusing on, but
apparently we are.
Apparently we are, and right now we are really questioning also ourselves and our work and the relationship of our research topic with water and the problems that water is facing today. So we're hoping to continue working around the water.
Thank you so much. First of all, congratulations for your all success on the Waterscapes project. It was so nice to see your presentations and the way you design. There are a few comments and questions on the chat I can read.
Of course, yes.
One said, in my opinion, whatever your view of Berlin's post-Dahmer Plaza today, it is the largest and most advanced entity seriously focused on blue-green infrastructure in a city center in the 1990s. Mr. Professor Herbert has many projects on these topics. It's not a question, but if you have any comment on Berlin's Potsdamer Plaza or other areas focused on the blue-green infrastructure? It was nice to listen.
Okay, I mean Potsdamer. We met in Germany. Yeah. we met in Cottbus, actually, a city so close to Berlin that almost they function kind of like together. And Potsdamer Platz is, you know, I mean the area historically. Of course, I'm not so much familiar with the works of this professor Herbert Dreiseitel, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I'm not so much familiar with his works, but yes, Potsdamer Platz is one of those areas where in the 90s, you know, it also became a huge topic of discussion in terms of the history, in terms of like what to do with the place and what kind of a future to construct for Berlin, right? Like, and it was again a place that witnessed so many competitions from so many renowned architects all over the world, and there are so many experiments around Potsdamer Platz when we go. And of course, one of those, I wouldn't be surprised that one of those experiments is actually about the blue and green infrastructure of the city. So in that sense, I mean, Berlin and many other speculative projects that are in Berlin are providing really great insights about it. I would definitely suggest everyone to look at this particular professor's works, as our commentator is suggesting, but also looking at the project, you know, again, another speculative project by Ungers and Rem Koolhaas, you know, the archipelagos, Berlin archipelagos, will also be really great to think about the impacts of climate change, the green and blue infrastructure again. Thank you.
Thank you. The other one is, you mentioned about the Golden Horn, and I am wondering, what do you think of as an architect for landfilled areas on the seashore in general?
Would you like to?
I mean, that's a really general, approach, but I mean, any kind of decision that is not somehow ecologically driven or somehow taking care of the natural environments that we are living today, at the end of the day, I'm revolving around the same topic again. We are living in this era that we have constant climate change, and global warming is one of the most serious topics that we as architects can think about and have a responsibility actually to act upon. So my comment will be that any kind of decision that is harming our built environment and natural environment, either natural or built, it should be rethought, and it should be thought 2 times at least, and checked, double checked, and if we are able to somehow provide the same spaces, because as architects we have this role of somehow coming up with difficult solutions to difficult problems, but maybe the solutions can be simpler, and they can somehow solve those difficult problems still.
Sometimes it's also not doing, right? Sometimes you know, as we're trying to solve a question, as we're trying to bring an answer to a certain question, then we are maybe overdoing, and maybe sometimes it's harder to say not to do. I think those landfilled areas in waterfronts, you know, it's again, humans' dominance on nature is unquestionable, right? And we are dominating nature. We're dominating air, or earth and water, and of course we are using them for our own survival in that sense. And I guess again, like, you know, that's an attempt again, sometimes instinctually, again, for ourselves, for our own survival. What we need to question in here, the actions that we are taking for our own survival, are they actually generating problems for our own survival? Because our survival is not separate from the survival of nature. So, you know, again, I think this is one of the issues, you know, one of the many things that we do to manipulate nature. And again, you know, we need to work with that like, you know, that very cliche, but, you know, very correct term at the same time, not working against nature, but working with nature, right? So if you need space around the waterfront, you know, it's feeling a solution. Sometimes yes, sometimes not, you know, that is an issue.
I mean, for example, in our Hadich project, of course, there was a lack of space in the waterfront, but we proposed these floating platforms that somehow they don't harm. They provide you the space the same way you can put a football field, you can put a basketball field, but they are not somehow harming the environment. It's more than that. You can provide the systems to these platforms to heal somehow and clean the waters of Haliç.
In that sense, in the case of Haliç, you know, like we could have just said, okay, like we only have 7 meters of width on the waterfront. Let's just make it wider to put many more basketball fields or football fields. But the choice was actually to generate, like to create these floating platforms, which, you know, benefited the area. Economically, it's cheaper. Also, you know, for the earthquake, it functions better, right? Like, because that's also another problem of Golden Horn. And at the same time, you know, it was with this vegetation that the floating platforms had underneath, it was also cleaning water. So, you know, it was like one stone, I don't know, like too many birds, I guess. So we can be critical about these very traditional 20th century ideas about how we manipulate nature. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
There were all the questions. And just I want to remind you that event will be shared on the Silkar Mining account, YouTube account after this event. And if you want to say something, Erdoğan Bey, you can.
Of course, it is very difficult to say something after such a nice presentation, but I would like to say, I think the challenge for the architect lies to combine all multidisciplinary issues in such a creative way that people then really admire and appreciate, because there is geography through your presentation, there is history, there is culture, there is sociology, you know, topography. So all these issues have to be interrelated and interconnected in such a creative manner that I think that makes the architects really adorable, let me say, because it's something that I cannot create or think that way. So I really appreciate your works, and thanks for the contributions, and thanks joining our webinar. And once again, I wish a good, still continuing success in your future works, and we will be your followers. And I hope one day, either in Spain or in Turkey, we meet and have a cup of coffee together.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, we're looking forward to those days where we can make this face-to-face interactions.
I mean, this is a good platform and a good, it's really nice to meet online, but sometimes the physical interaction is necessary too.
Yeah, very much. We're looking forward to it. Thank you very much for welcoming us.
Thank you, Zuhal. Thank you, Carlos.
We are so glad to have met you and hope to see you in person as well. And good luck, everybody. Also, if you have any questions or any comments about our works, we're always open and accessible through Zoom and too many platforms. So thank you very much for listening to us today.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, all of you. Thanks also to all the participants. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Görüşmek üzere.
Bye.
Bye-bye.